Doc Spencer reached into the car and came out with something huge and round wrapped up in greaseproof paper. "My wife asked me to give you this." He pushed the package towards me. Then he jumped into his car and drove quickly away. I stood there clasping the big round thing tightly in my hands. After a while I turned and walked back up the steps into the caravan with my precious parcel. I placed it in the centre of the table, and very carefully I began to unwrap the greaseproof paper. I saw before me the most enormous and beautiful pie in the world. It was covered all over, top, sides, and bottom, with a rich golden pastry. I took a knife from beside the sink and cut out a wedge. It was a cold meat pie. The meat was pink and tender, with no fat or gristle in it, and there were hard-boiled eggs buried like treasures in several different places. The taste was absolutely fabulous. The next morning, a Monday, my father was up at 6 o'clock. He started hobbling round the caravan to test his leg. "It hardly hurts at all. I can walk you to school." "No, it's 2 miles each way. Don't do it, Dad, please." So that day I went to school alone. But he insisted on coming with me the next day. I couldn't stop him. He walked a bit stiff-legged, but he moved as fast as ever, and the metal thing went clink on the road each time he put it down. And so life at the filling station returned as normal. Or anyway, nearly to normal. I say nearly because things were definitely not quite the same as they had been before. The difference lay in my father. A change had come over him. It wasn't a big change, but now and again I would see him standing alone, gazing up the road in the direction of Hazel's Wood. I knew that sooner or later he would tell me what the trouble was. I hadn't long to wait. About 10 days after his return from hospital, the two of us were sitting out on the platform of the caravan, watching the sun go down behind the big trees on the top of the hill across the valley. "You know what makes me so hopping mad?" my father said to me all of a sudden. "I get up in the mornings, feeling pretty good. Then, about 9 o'clock every single day of the week, that huge silver Rolls-Royce comes swishing past the filling station, and I see that big bloated face of Mr. Victor Hazel behind the wheel. And as he passes by, I see a sneer under his nose and a smug little smirk around his mouth, and although I only see him for 3 seconds, it makes me madder than mackerel." "I don't blame you," I said. A silence fell upon us. "I'll tell you something interesting," he said at last. "The shooting season for pheasants starts on Saturday. It always starts on the 1st of October. And every year Mr. Hazel celebrates the occasion by giving a grand opening day shooting party." "Do lots of people come?" "Hundreds," he said. "Dukes and lords, barons and baronets, wealthy businessmen, and all the fancy folk in the county. They come with their guns and their dogs and their wives, and all day long the noise of shooting rolls across the valley. But they don't come because they like Mr. Hazel. Secretly, they all despise him." "Then why do they come, Dad?" "Because it's the best pheasant shoot in the south of England. But to Mr. Hazel, it is the greatest day in the year, and he's willing to pay almost anything to make it a success. He spends a fortune on those pheasants. Each summer, he buys hundreds of young birds from the pheasant farm and puts them in the wood where the keepers feed 'em and guard 'em. Do you know, Danny, that the cost of rearing and keeping one single pheasant up to the time when it's ready to be shot is equal to the price of 100 loaves of bread?" "It's not true." "I swear it. But to Mr. Hazel, it's worth every penny of it. And you know why? It makes him feel important. But listen, Danny, I want to tell you what I would dearly love to do right now." Here it comes, I thought. It's a deadly secret, Danny. He paused and then leaned close to me. "I would like," he whispered, "to find a way of poaching so many pheasants from Hazel's Wood that there wouldn't be any left for the big opening day shoot on October the 1st. "Dad, no! Shh, listen. If I could find a way of knocking off a couple of 100 birds all in one go—" 200 is impossible! Just imagine, Danny, what a glorious victory that would be. All the dukes and lords and famous men would arrive in their big cars, and Mr. Hazel would strut about like a peacock welcoming them and saying things like, "Plenty of birds out there for you this year, Lord Thistlethwaite." And lo and behold, there wouldn't be a single pheasant to be found anywhere. And Mr. Victor Hazel's face would be redder than a boiled beetroot. But how could it be done? "There's no way, Dad. It's hard enough just getting 2 birds up in those woods, let alone 200. "I know that. It's the keepers that make it so difficult. There are 3 of them, and they're always around." "Do they stay right through the night?" "No, not through the night. They go off home as soon as all the pheasants are safely up in the trees roosting. But nobody's ever discovered a way of poaching a roosting pheasant. Come on, it's about your bedtime. Off you go, and I'll come in and tell you a story."